Welcome back to this WGAL Commitment 2018 debate in the race for governor. Tonight, the three candidates running for the Republican nomination are here live in our studio.
We're going to start this next question with Senator Wagner. Medical marijuana just became legal this year in Pennsylvania. It's highly regulated. It's making a lot of money for the state. So, would you favor doing the same thing for recreational marijuana?
I would absolutely not. Listen, I employ 250 truck drivers between several companies. But I will tell you that right now, the medical marijuana bill that we passed and went to the governor's desk and was signed almost 2 years ago, we are working through the process. I don't know how much revenue the state has generated through that. I don't think it's a lot, and it seems like there's a lot of hiccups we're going through. But let's get the medical marijuana program up and running and make sure that is effective and every I is being dotted and T is crossed. But absolutely not. I am not in favor of legalization of recreational marijuana, nor would I ever promote it, nor would I ever sign a bill if it came to my desk.
Why not?
It's just another gateway drug. There are states that have recreational marijuana. Colorado, for example, and if you do some research, it's not working well. And listen, we have a heroin opioid crisis here in Pennsylvania. It's off the charts. And I think we have to really step back and we have to look at, what's happening here in our counties, in our state. And, medical marijuana was for a specific purpose. But recreational is just, okay. It's recreational, and we don't need another recreational drug.
Thank you. Ms. Ellsworth.
When I led the Workforce Investment Board in Western Pennsylvania, the #1 challenge in finding a worker for jobs that are open today was that they couldn't pass a drug test, #1. And so it would only exacerbate our workforce issues and our workforce challenges if we were to legalize marijuana. Secondly, as Senator Wagner said, if you look at Colorado and places that have experienced legalized marijuana, you see problems with truancy. You see high school dropout rates increase. You see emergency visits increase because of the consumables. And so I don't think it is a positive thing, and I think this too. I think there is a great danger that the state of Pennsylvania is itself going to be addicted to marijuana, just as it has become addicted to smoking and gambling and drinking. And we can't get our tax revenues from our most vulnerable citizens. We need to grow the tax base, and from productive enterprises. That's where we need to support ourselves as a state.
All right, thank you. Paul Mango, would you legalize recreational marijuana?
No, and I usually start this answer by saying I can't believe we're having the conversation. We're in the midst of the most destructive public health crisis in the history of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as the others have noted. We're losing 100 a week. The last thing we need to do is introduce our kids and others and adults to another substance like this. Just last week or this week, there was a bill before the governor. It had to do with workers' compensation. We have, on average, more painkiller prescriptions in Pennsylvania by 80% above the median than virtually any other place in America. We're #3 in terms of doing that. We have physicians and lawyers owning pharmacies and prescribing these painkiller drugs for their own economic benefit. And Governor Wolf vetoed that bill. He vetoed that bill. Here's a guy who has not led. I've said this before. It's as if he's been in the witness protection program for 3.5 years. He is not providing the leadership commensurate with 100 Pennsylvanians dying a week. So we need to tackle, absolutely, the drug overdose epidemic before we would ever even contemplate legalizing recreational marijuana.
All right, thank you.
Continue with our next topic, the death penalty. We start with Ms. Ellsworth on this question. Governor Wolf has a moratorium on the death penalty. Only 3 Pennsylvanians have been executed in the state since 1976, all under Republican Governor Tom Ridge. Would you reinstate the death penalty?
I am supportive of the death penalty in those situations where I think it has a meaningful deterrent effect. And so all of the pending warrants I would evaluate on that basis.
Mr. Mango.
I would absolutely reinstate the death penalty. And one of the chief reasons why is I believe there are crimes so heinous that it deserves it. How about what happened just a couple weeks ago? We had a corrections officer killed by a guy who was already on a life sentence. What do we do with those types of folks? I've spent a lot of time with our law enforcement officers. And you know what upsets them about Governor Wolf? When he will not sign the death warrant of a guy named Eric Frein up in the northeast part of Pennsylvania who assassinated a police officer and almost killed a second one. So if we're going to have the backs of our law enforcement officers, we need to make sure we have the laws that are on the books enforced. The death penalty is one of them. I would reinstate it.
Senator Wagner?
Yes, within 48 hours, I would reinstate the death penalty, and I am willing to sign death warrants. You know, you go back to just an incredible, brutal, 2-week period in 1995. There's a man by the name of Mark Spots that's been sitting on death row since 1995. Shot and killed his brother in their home. And then he jumped in a car, took his brother's car, drove towards Harrisburg, carjacked a car with a woman and shot and killed that woman. Then he carjacked another car and shot and killed another woman as he got closer to Harrisburg. Then he showed up in York County. And he carjacked a car with a woman by the name of Penny Gunnett. Penny Gunnett would be 64 years old. I'm 62. And he shot and killed her 2 miles from where I live today, and a mile from the West York Borough. And then when he was finished, he ran over her body with the car. He will be the first death warrant that I will sign. And I will support law enforcement, folks that are out there. They need to know that they have a governor that has their back. And Governor Wolf is a coward when it comes to this. He is not standing tall with law enforcement by having a moratorium on the death penalty.
All right, thank you.
And to be clear, just to follow up, to be clear, assaults on law enforcement officers are crimes where there is a deterrent effect from the death penalty, just to be clear.
All right, thank you. Next question goes to Paul Mango first. Pennsylvania's minimum wage went up to $7.25 in 2009. That is the federally mandated minimum, but every state we border pays at least $1 more. 19 more states are expected to raise their minimum wages this year. Mr. Mango, should Pennsylvania be one of them?
No, and this is where I disagree with Senator Wagner. I do not think we should raise the minimum wage. He and Tom Wolf want a higher minimum wage. I don't think that's a good thing to do, and let me tell you why. I started as a dishwasher. I rotated produce in a farmer's stand. I was a paper boy earning $1.75 an hour. You know what I learned during those jobs? I learned about leadership. I learned about customer service. I learned about teamwork. These are good jobs. We need to bring dignity back to work again, any type of work. But more important, my job is to ensure we're creating maximum wage jobs here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and that's not what Tom Wolf is doing. We have lost, believe it or not, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, jobs 9 months in a row. And I think we need a governor who finally gets this economy going to ensure that we have much more than minimum wage jobs. One way to do that is through vocational training. We are tens of thousands of jobs short. Machine tool operators, steam pipe fitters, electricians, carpenters. And I'm very supportive of early in school, 8th grade, 9th grade, creating another path for our kids to be successful. These are family sustaining incomes. They can make $65,000, $75,000, $80,000 a year without debt. I would also encourage our PASHE system, the Pennsylvania system of higher education, to introduce more of these vocational training schools. Now, the senator said he would let those schools fail, all those campuses across the Commonwealth. I would fix them. I would introduce these types of programs to them. We'll have skilled workers making maximum wage jobs. We won't have to worry about minimum wage.
All right, this is great. Senator Wagner, you're next.
I am in favor of raising the minimum wage to probably $9.50 or $9.75. The difference between Mr. Mango and myself is he's really an elitist. He doesn't know what's going on the ground. Walk into a Sheetz, a Wawa, a Rutter's, a Royal Farms. They're paying $10.50 on the door. Let's get the discussion off the table. But I'm not in favor of raising the minimum wage from $12 or $15 an hour as Governor Wolf is promoting. But at the end of the day, and I would also have a training wage. I wouldn't move a student at 16 years old to $9.50 or $9.75. There'd be a training wage, and maybe the training wage is up to $8, something like that. But at the end of the day, we have a skilled labor crisis, and we also have a lot of people receiving public assistance. I would like to see an uphill domino effect where we could take people in public assistance and train them and help them become gainfully employed. And I would like to take the person that is maybe at a convenience store, supermarket, or somewhere else, go to a trade school and learn how to be a welder, and then make even more than what they made before. But I'm in favor of $9.50 to $9.75.
All right, thank you very much.
I'm going to need to respond to that. Use my name.
We'll go to Laura Ellsworth first, and then, sure.
I am not in favor of raising the minimum wage at this time. I think we need to focus on creating a broad swath of high-paying jobs. And the best way that we can do that is in our natural gas industry. It is the greatest blessing of this state, not just for our generation, but for 1 and 2 generations to come. And so what we need is a governor who understands how that industry works, how investments are made in that industry, and how to structure public policy in Pennsylvania to get that gas actually out of the ground. Taxing it in a number that is too high, we'll leave it in the ground for the next 200 years. We need to find a structure that brings it out of the ground, because here is the benefit. It is the downstream manufacturing where the actual benefit is to Pennsylvanians, because energy is the #1 cost of sophisticated manufacturing. Put manufacturing right on top of the energy source. We will create thousands of good, high-paying jobs for our citizens and here in Pennsylvania.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mango.
The senator called me an elitist, okay? I grew up in a household where 5 kids used the same bathroom. I grew up in a household where my mother used to go down to my father's place of work to pick up his paycheck on Fridays so we could all eat. He criticized the fact that I got a free education at West Point. I'm sick and tired of the senator criticizing my service, my sacrifice, and my success. When I hear him do that, it reminds me of Barack Obama or Tom Wolfe. I'm tired of it. I took a different path. I didn't collect garbage for a living. I did something different. I want to encourage all types of career paths in Pennsylvania. I hope parents have the opportunity to achieve, have their kids achieve what I achieved for my parents, and I'm tired of someone criticizing my service, my sacrifice, and my success.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mango.
Mr. Wagner, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I think the people of Pennsylvania want someone who is more on their level. Listen, I've created thousands of jobs over my 35 plus years. I went to banks and I borrowed money and I took risks. And I'm on the ground every day. I've seen the skilled labor crisis, and I've seen it for almost 20 years. The people of Pennsylvania want somebody who understands what it's like on the ground. They want to understand someone who employs people that walk across the parking lot with a lunchbox and get in a truck or get into a construction vehicle or go out and work on a bridge job or go into a plant. They want someone who talks on their level and understands what's going on the ground.
I think you've both done a good job of separating yourself from each other. Thank you, and we're going to move on.
And this question is for Senator Wagner. Back to you in our rotation. Before this debate ends, quite possibly several Pennsylvanians will die of an opioid overdose. Day 1 in office, what will you do to try to slow down this epidemic?
Well, I'm not going to wait till day 1. What I'm going to do when I'm governor-elect on Wednesday after the November general election, I'm going to reach out to all 67 district attorneys. I'm going to reach out to law enforcement communities. I'm going to reach out to the treatment community. I'm going to reach out to recovering addicts, and I'm going to reach out to parents of victims or family members of victims. And we're all going to come together, and I'm going to, how can I help you? Now listen, I have a lot of, firsthand experience. I was involved in the formation of the York County Heroin Task Force in 2014. The district attorneys know what they want to do. Law enforcement, we need more mandatory minimum sentences. We need more teeth. If you're dealing heroin in Lancaster City or York City or Allentown or Erie and you're carrying a gun, I think you should have a pretty stiff sentence, maybe 5 to 10 years. But also as a governor, I will issue executive orders on the number of pills that could be prescribed for opioids, the painkillers. The bottom line is that we need to be in our schools, we need to be educating. We haven't been educating. Listen, the school boards, the teachers, everybody, just turned a blind eye for a long period of time. Oh, we don't have a problem in our schools. But I met with a group of school administrators in 2014, and I asked them what they saw in their schools. And when I said, and they said, well, we're not really hearing or seeing anything. And I said, I can't believe that. I said, I could go to any one of the schools, and these are York County superintendents. I could go to any one of your schools and find a student, give them $20 or $50, and send them in, they'll come out with heroin. We're living with our heads in the sand, and you need a leader.
Thank you, Senator. Laura Ellsworth?
I have 3 broad categories: interdiction, treatment, and education. Interdiction, we have 4,200 state police officers. Of the 4,200, only 95 are trained narcotics agents, and they work in silos. So we need to train up our state police. We need to have them work better with the Attorney General's separate agents and the federal authorities. And we need to have all of those people work better with local law enforcement. Second, we need to go after the pill mills. We know where they are. They are at the intersection of highways. We should go after their civil licenses with a lower standard of proof. On treatment, we should have 2 strikes, you're in. 2 times of revival with Narcan. You need to go into treatment, real, meaningful treatment. And some people say, should it be 3 strikes? I say, how many near-death experiences does it take to know that somebody needs more help? And on education, we need to tell our parents, our coaches, our teachers, don't take opiates if you don't need them. A little bit of pain is better than a lifetime of addiction.
Mr. Mango,
Yeah, I don't think this problem can be solved from Harrisburg. It needs to be led by a governor who cares about this, but it can only be solved in our local communities. And I've talked about this before. This is not one epidemic. It's 18 to 20 different epidemics expressing themselves very differently across the Commonwealth. The only way we're going to be able to successfully address this is by bringing the relevant parties together locally, the coroners, the pharmacists, the law enforcement, the district's attorney, the EMS folks, the doctors, the parents who have lost kids. Collectively, they understand what's happening. We need to get them into this structure where they can solve that problem, and then the state needs to resource it. But as opposed to some of my opponents here, I don't believe treatment long-term is going to be successful. The paper said yesterday that we're spending as a country $500 billion on the drug overdose epidemic, principally treatment. If you look at the statistics coming out of treatment after 4, 5, 6, 10 times through treatment, maybe 15% make it. We have to put as many resources as possible into prevention. And prevention is, I think, all about awareness. Parents and kids need to understand how dangerous this stuff is. It is about data, it is about controlling prescriptions, it is about interdiction, but with a focus toward prevention. If we just treat this, we are going to bankrupt the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Thank you very much.
All right, immigration. Let's start with Laura Ellsworth. Immigration is a hot topic for Pennsylvania's farmers. We're going to get specific. They're concerned about surprise raids by law enforcement that could affect their workers and their harvests. Would you support changing immigration policy in Pennsylvania to allow those workers to stay here?
Immigration is a federal issue. It is the borders of the country. It is a federal issue. And the issue often arises in sanctuary cities. If it arose in agriculture, I think it's the same thing. It is not for a local place to say that they will not enforce federal law or that they will not reasonably cooperate with ICE and federal officials. At the same time, I do not believe that we should allow federal officials to completely commandeer our police operations so that our streets are left uncovered. But I think your question raises this issue, that in much of the conversation about sanctuary cities, we overlook the issue that many of these people have been here as an open secret in our communities for decades. They have had children here who are American citizens. They have worked, as you say, on our farms, caring for our children and our elderly parents and our homes and our gardens, and they go to church with us. And I believe that as a country, we have the mercy and the decency and the wisdom to distinguish between the criminals and the gang members who must be deported and those who sit next to us in church and work on our farms. I believe we have the mercy to do that, but if we do, we must close our borders, because if we don't close our borders, the mercy and generosity of spirit that we show to the people who are here contributing to our farms will create a flood over the border, and we cannot allow that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mango.
Yeah, so I'm the grandson of an immigrant from Italy. I value immigration, legal immigration in this country and in the Commonwealth very highly. I think we ought to embrace legal immigrants, and Pennsylvania has not been the beneficiary of as much legal immigration as other states have. But I have a different point of view than Ms. Ellsworth on sanctuary cities. I think, number one, they've been proven to be dangerous. 2, you cannot have a sworn officer of the law under any circumstances intentionally obstructing the law. And the thing that upsets Pennsylvanians more than anything else is in sanctuary cities, we give preferences to criminal, illegal immigrants that we would not give to citizens of Pennsylvania. So a governor can control, in many ways, what's happening with sanctuary cities. I think we need to end sanctuary cities here in Pennsylvania, and that's what I would do as your next governor.
All right, thank you. Senator Wagner.
Okay, number one, I'm not in favor of sanctuary cities either, but I can tell you the immigration system is broken here in this country. We know it, okay? And I just recently, in the last couple weeks, the federal government lets out a certain number of visas, work visas, the H-2A visas. We don't have enough visas. And at the end of the day, industries need workers. and they're starving for workers. You know, the agriculture industry here in Pennsylvania is starving. I just read something yesterday that on the Eastern Shore, the crab processors are not going to be able to employ people because, again, they can't get visas. There's a difference between the immigration system and securing our borders. We do need to secure our borders. I'm in favor of the wall. We need to know who's coming in. Heck, I needed a security guy to get me in the front door here at WGAL tonight. Okay, you're well secured here. You've secured your building. But the bottom line is we need to move on this problem a lot quicker in Washington because it is affecting our economy. This is what is stymieing the growth of Pennsylvania, and this is what's stymieing revenue. We need this immigration system fixed.
Okay, thank you. I think, Laura,
Could I do
we're
a very brief rebuttal because I think he did mention, I think he
very
misstated.
quickly, we're going to move on.
I do not support cities that call themselves sanctuary cities. It is a broadcast that this is a lawless place and it attracts lawless people of many kinds. So I do
Okay.
not support the
Thank
label.
you. Appreciate it.
There's a lot more we want to hear from these candidates still to come. More questions and answers when we come right back.